Hey, this is Brendan Ives, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about capital. When you think about capital, often people go to the idea of money or financial capital. And in truth, I understand that. We think about venture capital for startups, we think about capital when it comes to building a home or building a business. And it's perfectly fine to understand capital that way. But I think that there are actually five different types of capital, and we often neglect certain ones. So I want to share with you five different types of capital and how they can help you, your career, your business, and your life. The first capital I want to mention is an intellectual capital. We all have a certain amount of intellectual capital that has been invested within us over the years, whether it be through grade school, whether it's through college, vocational programs, even additional books and readings that you would do by yourself. Whatever it is that you pursue, when you pursue intellectual capital, you are trying to gain information from somewhere else and take it and then apply it into your life and career. And in fact, intellectual capital can be the most valuable capital that you ever have because it gives you the ability to take information and then create a product or a service that gives you the ability to build value within the marketplace. We have sometimes overvalued intellectual capital. And what I mean by that is we have sought degrees, or we have said that going to college is the most important thing for a young person. And in fact, that is not the truth. The truth is that pursuing an intellect or pursuing an idea of learning is the most important thing for a young person. And that can be through an apprenticeship with an HVAC company or a plumber or an electrician. That can be learning, other types of trades, going into automotive repair, whatever it may be. It's very important that you get educational or intellectual capital, but it doesn't have to be through the traditional college route. In fact, many people who go through trade schools now are making 80, 90, 100,000 plus because they've learned how to become a master electrician or a master plumber. And we have a tremendous skills gap there where individuals now can take on the intellectual capital by becoming an apprentice to a master electrician, for say, and they can create a really, really great career by doing that. So don't ever sleep on intellectual capital. Continue learning throughout your life. The second part of a different type of capital than money is I would say it is relational capital. The people you know, the people you introduce yourself with, the network that you create. There's a great quote that says the difference between you today and the you in 5 years will be the people you meet and the books you read. And it's getting at the idea that the intellectual capital of you continuing to learn and the relational capital of you meeting new people and surrounding yourself with great folks. That is a tremendous advantage to you. When you go out into the marketplace and try to create value, your social network, the people that you know, the new relationships that you're able to forge will help determine your success. And in reality, the intellectual capital that you have and build and the relational capital that you build over time will actually be more important to a successful business or career than having money will be. And that's hard to hear because we think money fixes problems. But we also know that most money problems aren't money problems. They have something to do with something else in our life or in our companies. So it makes sense that intellectual capital and relational capital would be very, very important when it comes to furthering your career and engaging in information and relationships that will build a business or career successfully. The third area of capital that I would describe would be spiritual. And don't turn me off yet, because spiritual doesn't have to mean a traditional sort of going to church on Sunday mornings. Whether you're a Muslim, whether you're Jewish, whether you are Christian, whether you are atheist or an agnostic, any of those individuals can still act in spiritual ways. And what I mean by spiritual here is that they're trying to pursue something greater than themselves. And in the religious circles where you talk about like Christianity, of that pursuit of something greater than themselves is a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. Now, if you were Jewish, it would be the pursuit of relationship with God and keeping the covenant with Him. In the Muslim world, it is trying to live out and please Allah. And it is with others, it can be as simple as seeking to better the community or better the nation that you live in, of putting other people's needs above your own at some level is a spiritual process. And that spiritual capital that you will build will help create avenues for you to become a better, more generous, and engaging people. Pursuing the good of others is a spiritual act. And when you pursue the benefit of others, you will create value to other people's lives that will then create, that relational capital that you want. But having that spiritual connection to something greater than yourself is very important, and it provides you with a higher calling. And however you phrase that, or however you sort of define that for your life, it's still a purpose and a catalyst of greater work. The fourth is physical capital. And when I say physical capital, I'm speaking of, keeping yourself in good shape, keeping yourself healthy, being able to maintain great energy, sleeping well, taking care of yourself. That physical capital will allow you to be more productive over time. If you are constantly burnt out, if you're not able to consistently recharge and bring energy to the work that you have or the passion projects that you are engaging in. If you're not able to do that, that will cause problems long term. So keeping yourself in good physical shape and, being, healthy and living a life that allows you to pursue, good, clean living can be a very important capital within your life. And then finally, the fifth type of capital is the one we all know, right? Money, financial capital. And there is an importance of having financial backing, being able to put together money in order to pursue a project. It is, very good and very, worthwhile. However, what I will tell you, and I've worked in nonprofits and with nonprofits for over 20 years. And, sometimes it's as a board member, sometimes it's as a leader in nonprofits. And what I will tell you is this: if you have the intellectual capital, the relational capital, and then that sense of doing something greater than yourself, you can find the money. Those first three capitals that I talked about, the intellectual, relational, and spiritual, or connection to something greater than just you yourself, those three capitals will bring money in if you can articulate the cause well. Money is out there for you to get and have access to if you will work your network, you will use your intellect, and that you call people to a bigger purpose. I think about Apple. Apple Computers was getting ready to go bankrupt. They were going to be bankrupt within 90 days, and they brought Steve Jobs back into the fold. And what he did was he cast a vision of doing something greater than simply building another computer. He wanted Apple to think different. He wanted them to be different. And he wanted to change the narrative of what we think computing is. And he wanted to change not only the design, but the interactions and the engagement with how computers and electronics would interact with humans on a day-to-day basis. He wanted to be different. And that call brought in investment from people like Bill Gates and Microsoft and plenty of other investors who bought in to Steve and his intellectual and relational network, but also that spiritual call to something greater. He said that the computing industry is something that's boring. It's not, it's not exciting. It isn't doing anything differently than it has for the past however many years. We want to be different and we want to change the experience of the customers. And today, if you look at Apple, they are no longer a computer manufacturer. Yes, they have a MacBook Air, they have a MacBook Pro, but think about the phones in half of Americans' pockets, the Apple iPhone. Think about the way that we interact with music. We have, MP3s, or we have, digital music libraries on our phones. We stream music now on our phones. That's due to Apple and iTunes. We have these tablets. We have Apple Watches. We have, earpods. All of these things are outside of a computer company, and they have become a lifestyle company. They've become a consumer-driven experience that will drive some people to stand in lines for days to get the new latest release. And it's because of that vision, that intellectual capital, the relational capital, and the spiritual capital that Jobs sold to the world. Now, having said that, you don't have to have all five capitals in order to succeed in life. In fact, you may be able to get away with just a couple. I will tell you that I think Steve Jobs had incredible intellectual capital when it came to design and creativity and rethinking industries. He also had great spiritual capital, a thinking of a greater sense of purpose in his life outside of himself. He wanted to create a movement that would change the way humans interacted with computers. But that relational capital, he had to have a certain amount of it, but he also could be very, very poor in his relationships. And if you want to learn more about that, read the story of Steve Jobs. I believe Walter Isaacson has a great book on that, but there are other ones as well. But, Steve struggled with personal relationships. Now, what he did have that he had going for him that a lot of people didn't, sort of relate to relational capital was he was able to captivate an audience and connect with broad groups of people. And that's a type of relational capital that sometimes we don't think of that way. But he was able to get up on stage and he was able to present a vision. And that was relational capital, reaching out to a lot of different people in order to cast vision of what Apple computers was going to become. And, even though he was pretty bad on the one-on-one in the way that he communicated with people, he was really good at speaking of the language and speaking the dream of into life when it came to communicating with large groups. He inspired millions of people, and that's a form of relational capital. So just because you're not strong in every sense of a certain category, it doesn't mean you can't grow, and it also doesn't mean that you can't succeed. You just need to learn what capital you need for the specific setting that you are in. Hopefully that helps you and gives you an idea of what different types of capital is. And I hope that this will encourage you to go out and do great things this week. Take care.